A lot of women ask this question, and they ask it quietly, late at night, when nobody else is around. When does a man start seeing me as his wife? And I'll tell you something most people won't tell you. It doesn't happen when you beg. It doesn't happen when you explain yourself 100 times. And it sure doesn't happen when you shrink yourself just to keep him comfortable. A man starts seeing you as his wife when you stop trying to convince him and start standing in who you already are. A man starts seeing you as his wife when you stop auditioning for the role and start living like you already know your value. See, a lot of women don't realize they're treating love like a job interview, smiling too much, agreeing too fast, over-giving, over-explaining, trying to prove why they're worthy. But let me tell you something real. A man doesn't respect what he didn't have to earn. When you're constantly trying to impress him, you send a message you don't even know you're sending. And that message is, please pick me. And the moment a man feels like you're asking to be chosen, he stops seeing you as a wife and starts seeing you as an option. Now listen to me. A wife-level woman doesn't chase a man's attention. She attracts it. She doesn't argue for her place. She occupies it naturally. When you stop bending yourself into shapes just to fit his life, something shifts. Your energy changes. Your presence changes. And men feel energy before they understand logic. He starts noticing that you're not trying so hard anymore, and instead of pushing him away, that makes him lean in. When you value yourself, you move differently. You don't rush conversations. You don't panic when he gets quiet. You don't start explaining your worth every time he pulls back a little. You remain grounded, and that calm confidence does something powerful to a man. It tells him this woman is stable. This woman knows who she is. This woman won't fall apart if I don't text her back in 5 minutes. And that level of emotional strength makes a man start thinking long term. A man starts seeing you as his wife when he realizes you don't need him to complete you. You want him, but you don't require him to validate your existence. There's a big difference. Needing creates pressure. Wanting creates desire. When you stop acting like losing him would destroy you, he starts acting like losing you would cost him something. See, men don't fall in love with words, they fall in love with experiences. And when being around you feels peaceful, when your presence feels solid, when your reactions are measured instead of emotional explosions, he begins to associate you with stability. And stability is the foundation of marriage. Not passion alone, not attraction alone. Stability. When you respect yourself, you teach a man how to treat you without saying a word. You don't tolerate inconsistency. You don't reward bare minimum effort. You don't argue about standards, you live by them. And when a man sees that you won't lower yourself just to keep him comfortable, he starts elevating his behavior to keep you. A woman who knows her worth doesn't threaten a man, but she does challenge him. She challenges him to grow, to show up, to be intentional. And intentionality is where wife thoughts are born. Because a man doesn't want to marry confusion. He doesn't want to marry insecurity. He wants to marry a woman who knows where she's going, even if she's walking alone. The moment you stop auditioning is the moment you stop being replaceable. And when a man realizes you are not easily replaced, not easily manipulated, and not easily forgotten, that's when the idea of you as his wife starts taking shape in his mind. A man starts seeing you as his wife when being with you feels like peace instead of pressure. A lot of people confuse excitement with love, but excitement fades, peace stays, and a man who has lived in stress, responsibility, and constant expectations doesn't want to come home to more tension. He wants a place where his shoulders drop, where his mind can rest, where he doesn't feel like he's being judged every time he walks through the door. When you bring peace into a man's life, you don't do it by being silent or ignoring your needs. You do it by being emotionally mature. You choose your words carefully. You don't turn every disagreement into a crisis. You understand that emotions don't need to be explosive to be powerful. That kind of control tells a man, this woman can handle life with me, not just romance. Consistency is what separates a girlfriend from a wife. Anybody can be loving on a good day. Anybody can be sweet when everything is going right. But a wife, level woman shows up the same way on a hard day as she does on an easy one. She doesn't change her tone every week. She doesn't keep him guessing where he stands. And when a man realizes he doesn't have to decode your moods to feel secure, he starts seeing you as someone he can build a future with. A man pays attention to how you respond when things don't go your way. Do you explode, shut down, or manipulate? Or do you communicate clearly and stand firm without disrespect? Because marriage is pressure. Bills, kids, sickness, disappointments, all of it. And if he sees that every inconvenience turns into emotional chaos, he can't picture you as his wife, no matter how much he cares about you. Peace also comes from emotional safety. A man needs to feel like he can make mistakes without being humiliated. That doesn't mean you tolerate nonsense. It means you correct without tearing him down. You address issues without throwing the past in his face. And when a man feels emotionally safe, he opens up. When he opens up, he bonds. And when he bonds, commitment starts to grow. A woman who brings peace doesn't rush a man's process. She understands that love matures differently for men. She allows space without assuming rejection. She doesn't take silence as abandonment. And that patience builds trust. When a man sees you're not trying to control his pace, he starts wanting to match yours. Consistency also means boundaries. Peace doesn't come from over-giving. It comes from balance. You don't pour into him until you're empty. You don't sacrifice your well-being to prove loyalty. And when a man sees that you respect yourself enough to protect your energy, he respects you too, because a woman who manages herself well can manage a household. A man starts seeing you as his wife when your presence feels like a safe place, not a performance. He doesn't feel like he has to impress you every second. He doesn't feel like one mistake will cost him everything. He feels accepted but still inspired to do better. And that combination is rare. Peace and consistency create something powerful in a man's mind. They make him think long-term. They make him imagine stability. They make him see you not just as a moment in his life, but as someone who could walk beside him through all of it. A man starts seeing you as his wife when you stop trying to pressure him into commitment and start living by your standards instead. A lot of women think asking for more, explaining timelines, or pushing for labels will make a man step up. But pressure doesn't create commitment, it creates resistance. The more a man feels cornered, the more he pulls away. But when he sees a woman who is clear about what she accepts and what she doesn't, without anger or ultimatums, something inside him wakes up. Standards speak louder than arguments. You don't have to threaten to leave. You don't have to constantly remind him what you deserve. You show it in how you move. You show it in what you allow and what you calmly walk away from. And when a man realizes that access to you comes with responsibility, he starts acting differently. Not because he's afraid, but because he respects the value of what's in front of him. A wife, level woman doesn't force a man to change. She gives him a clear choice. Rise or remain where you are. And men understand choices. When he knows you're not trying to mold him, fix him, or drag him into readiness, he stops feeling defensive. Instead, he starts evaluating himself. He asks, Am I showing up the way this woman deserves? And that question is where commitment begins. A man is naturally driven to protect and provide when he feels respected, not praised endlessly, but respected. When you trust his leadership while still maintaining your independence, you activate something deep in him. You don't compete with him. You don't emasculate him during disagreements. You address issues without attacking his identity, and that balance makes him feel like a man, not a project. Pressure says, do this or else. Standards say, this is who I am, and a man who sees that you are solid in your values understands that marriage with you would be structured, not chaotic. He starts to picture a life where expectations are clear, roles are respected, and partnership feels possible. When you stop negotiating your boundaries just to keep him, you teach him that you are not desperate for companionship. And desperation is the fastest way to lose respect. Calm confidence, on the other hand, makes a man step up. When he notices that you're okay whether he stays or goes, he starts wanting to stay. Because now the relationship feels like a privilege, not an obligation. A man also watches how you respond when he falls short. Do you explode and punish, or do you address the issue and move accordingly? A wife-level woman doesn't argue endlessly. She observes, decides, and adjusts her access. And that maturity makes a man realize he's dealing with a woman who thinks long-term. Standards don't mean being cold. They mean being clear. They mean loving without losing yourself. And when a man sees that you can be warm, supportive, and kind while still holding your ground, he starts associating you with balance. And balance is something a man wants to come home to for the rest of his life. When your standards are firm and your delivery is calm, a man doesn't feel controlled. He feels challenged in the best way. And that challenge is what pushes him to see you not just as someone he's dating, but as someone who could stand beside him as his wife. A man starts seeing you as his wife when you stop chasing clarity and allow him the space to show his intentions. A lot of women think that asking the same questions in different ways will bring peace, but it usually does the opposite. It creates pressure, anxiety, and confusion. When you constantly seek reassurance, you unintentionally tell a man that you don't trust the connection or yourself. And trust is the foundation of marriage. When you step back from chasing answers, you give a man room to think. You give him space to feel your absence emotionally, not physically. And that space makes him reflect. He starts noticing what life feels like without your constant presence. Your constant care, your constant availability. And that's when realization happens. Not in arguments, not in long conversations, but in silence. A wife-level woman understands that clarity is not something you beg for. It's something a man offers when he is ready. And instead of chasing words, she watches behavior. She notices patterns. She pays attention to consistency. When you stop reacting to every shift in his energy, you show emotional strength. And emotional strength makes a man feel like he's dealing with a grown woman, not someone he needs to manage. Space is not punishment, it's perspective. When you don't immediately fill every gap with texts, calls, or explanations, a man starts filling those gaps with thoughts about you. He begins to ask himself why your energy feels different, why you're not chasing the conversation anymore. And that curiosity pulls him closer than any emotional plea ever could. A man also starts seeing you as his wife when he realizes you trust yourself enough to walk away if clarity never comes. That doesn't mean you threaten him. It means you live fully. You stay engaged in your life, your goals, your peace. And when a man sees that you're not pausing your world waiting on his decisions, he understands that being with you is a choice he must make intentionally. Chasing clarity often comes from fear of loss, fear of uncertainty. But a wife-level woman doesn't allow fear to control her actions. She allows wisdom to guide her. She knows that the right man will want to make things clear, not keep her guessing. And that confidence sends a strong message without saying a word. When you stop chasing, your energy shifts from anxious to grounded. And that grounded energy makes a man feel secure. He doesn't feel interrogated. He doesn't feel rushed. He feels trusted. And when a man feels trusted, he wants to prove that trust is deserved. A man begins to see you differently when you allow him to miss you emotionally. When your absence is felt, not forced, he starts to understand your value on a deeper level. And value is what leads to commitment, not constant access. By releasing the need to control the outcome, you allow the truth of the connection to reveal itself. And when a man sees that you are secure enough to let things unfold naturally, he starts associating you with maturity, confidence, and long-term partnership. A man starts seeing you as his wife when he realizes that you respect yourself enough to teach him how to treat you without ever raising your voice. A lot of women think respect comes from explaining boundaries again and again, but real respect comes from enforcement. What you allow is what will continue, and what you calmly refuse is what changes behavior. When a man sees that you don't argue about standards but live by them, he understands that you are not easily swayed. A woman who respects herself doesn't tolerate inconsistency just to keep a man interested. She doesn't accept half effort while giving her full heart. And she doesn't reward confusion with more access. Instead, she adjusts, she observes, she responds with action rather than emotion. And that maturity forces a man to either rise or fall back. But either way, clarity appears. When you teach a man how to treat you, you're not doing it through demands. You're doing it through consequences. Not punishment, but alignment. If he shows up, you show appreciation. If he disappears, you don't chase, you continue living. And when a man sees that his behavior directly affects his access to you, he begins to act with intention, because now he understands that your presence is valuable. A man watches how a woman handles disrespect. Not just big disrespect, but the subtle kind. Late replies without explanation, broken promises, inconsistent effort. A wife-level woman doesn't overreact, but she doesn't overlook. She addresses issues once clearly and then lets action speak. And when a man realizes that you're not going to argue endlessly for basic consideration, he starts taking you seriously. Self-respect also shows up in how you speak about yourself. You don't downplay your needs. You don't apologize for wanting commitment. You don't pretend to be okay with situations that don't align with your future. And when a man hears a woman confidently express what she wants without desperation, he understands that she's not confused about her direction. And a woman who knows where she's going is someone a man can follow. A man starts seeing you as his wife when he notices that you don't compete with other women for his attention. You don't check phones. You don't stalk social media. You don't compare yourself. That quiet confidence tells him you believe in your value, and belief is contagious. When you believe in yourself, others start believing in you too. Respecting yourself also means you don't lose yourself in the relationship. You maintain your interests, your routines, your joy. You don't cancel your life to accommodate his availability. And when a man sees that you are whole on your own, he realizes that being with you adds to his life rather than completing yours. And addition is more attractive than dependency. A woman who enforces her boundaries without bitterness shows emotional intelligence. She doesn't use silence as manipulation. She doesn't use anger as control. She simply chooses what aligns with her values. And that calm firmness makes a man reflect. He starts asking himself if he's showing up the way a woman like you deserves. A man doesn't marry a woman he can walk over. He marries the woman he respects. And respect is built when you consistently choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when walking away would hurt. Because a man knows when a woman stays despite being mistreated, it's not love, it's fear. And fear doesn't inspire commitment. When a man realizes that you will not sacrifice your dignity for attention, he starts guarding your heart instead of testing it. He becomes more careful with his words, more intentional with his actions. Because now he understands that losing you would mean losing something irreplaceable. A man starts seeing you as his wife when the thought of losing your presence in his life feels heavier than the comfort of keeping his freedom. That shift doesn't happen because you threaten to leave or make him jealous. It happens quietly when he realizes that life is genuinely better with you in it. Not louder, not more dramatic, just better. Men don't commit when they feel controlled. They commit when they feel inspired. And inspiration comes from consistency, respect, and emotional security. When you show up as yourself without trying to trap him into a future, he starts imagining one on his own. Because now the idea of marriage isn't being forced into his mind, it's forming naturally. A man notices when your presence brings balance. When conversations don't feel like interrogations. When disagreements don't turn into battles. When your emotions are expressed without chaos. That balance makes him feel like life with you would be manageable, not overwhelming. And marriage is about managing life together, not surviving each other. The fear of losing you grows when you are no longer easily accessible. Not emotionally unavailable, but not endlessly available either. You're kind, warm, supportive, but you have limits. And limits create value. When a man realizes that access to you requires effort, honesty, and consistency, he begins to protect what he could lose. A wife-level woman doesn't rush a man's realization. She allows him to experience the weight of his choices. If he shows up, he experiences closeness. If he pulls away, he experiences distance. No drama, no speeches, just natural consequences. And those consequences force reflection. Reflection leads to appreciation. A man also begins to see you as his wife when he realizes that you add peace to his future, not problems. He starts thinking beyond the present moment. He imagines holidays, responsibilities, challenges. And when your image fits into those moments without tension, he understands that you're not just someone he enjoys, you're someone he could build with. Men are practical when it comes to marriage. Love matters, but sustainability matters more. Can this woman walk with me when life gets heavy? Can she support without controlling? Can she speak truth without destroying peace? When he sees that you can do those things, the idea of commitment stops feeling risky. A man fears losing a woman who doesn't need to be chased, begged, or managed, because that kind of woman leaves on her own terms. And men know the difference between a woman who stays because she's afraid and a woman who stays because she chooses to. Choice is powerful. And when a man realizes you are choosing him, not clinging to him, he starts choosing you back. Your presence becomes something he wants to protect when he sees that you won't stay where you're not valued. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly with dignity. And that dignity leaves an impression deeper than any argument ever could. When the thought of you not being there starts to affect his decisions, his tone, his effort, that's when the shift has happened. That's when he's no longer asking himself if he wants to commit. He's asking himself if he can afford to lose you.